It is worse than what we are hearing because most people don't know the truth about the impact abortion has had in our nation, not just with the Black community, but overall, the entire nation is no longer having enough children to sustain itself.
Well, welcome to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's kitchen table topic is abortion. Yes, we are delving into one of the most critical, most contentious issues in American society, particularly right now in this campaign. But it's at the heart of most of our debates that we're having. It's in the fundamental question as to whether or not we value human life, or specifically whether or not we value the unborn. This is a question that has divided families and communities across our nation and has done it for decades. In 1973, Roe v. Wade, which we've all heard, which we all know about as of right now, was legalized. And then what it did was it legalized abortion across the United States. And since then, there's been over 62 million unborn lives that have lost their lives due to abortion, this abortion issue, according to the Guttmacher Institute. This statistic represents not just numbers, but it represents individual lives and stories that will never be told. And that's what makes this issue so important, so necessary for this time. The pro-life movement has arose as a response to this tragic reality, advocating for the right to life, as well as the right to life for the most vulnerable among us. In years since Roe, the pro-life movement has sought to educate the public on the moral, the scientific, and the ethical implications of this decision. And recently, the landscape shifted significantly with the Supreme Court decision in 2022 to overturn Roe v. Wade, allowing states to implement their own laws regarding abortion. Today, I'm honored to have my guest, and I am so excited to introduce her. I'm putting her full bio in the description on the YouTube page, as I always do. But Catherine Davis is a dedicated pro-life activist, advocate, supporter, lover of the unborn. She's a historian on this issue, and she's been dedicating her entire life to highlighting the importance of protecting the unborn, and particularly the moms that are affected as a result of bad policy, drawing from her historical context as well as current events. So welcome to the show, Catherine. I'm so excited, and I'm going to start with a very powerful question. Is it as bad as we believe it is, as we're hearing?
Thank you for having me, Janelle.
Absolutely.
It is worse than what we are hearing because most people don't know the truth about the impact abortion has had in our nation, not just with the Black community, but overall, the entire nation is no longer having enough children to sustain itself. Meaning that over the course of 25 years, every woman of childbearing age should be having at least two children. Today, the number is 1.6 in the Caucasian community, but in the Black community, it's genocide. We are at 1.4. Wow. We are just a tenth of a point away from irreversibility, meaning we won't be here. That it's kind of like looking for a Native American in America today, right? Wow. We rarely see Native Americans. That's how bad it is. For the Black community, it's a genocide.
Oh my goodness. So why is this issue so important to you? Where's the emotional connection to it? Because I know there's always something that has to be emotionally connecting in order to keep you in the game, because it's a grind.
Well, there's two things. One, I am a woman who actually had two abortions.
Mm,
And back then, and it was at the beginning of Roe v. Wade,
mhm,
um, I didn't think about it. I kind of put it on the shelf in my mind and said, I'll think about that tomorrow.
mhm,
Well, tomorrow came as I was going to a Bible study.
mm,
And the topic for that Bible study was abortion. And so it was like God was saying to me, okay, today's the day, girlfriend. You got to think about it. You got to deal with it. So I
mhm,
go because if I left the Bible study, everybody would know. If I stayed, they were going to know. So it was like, oh God, what do I do? So I just slid into a chair and cried the whole Bible study.
mhm,
Well, I am ever grateful to God for the men who were leading that Bible study, Wellington Boone and Garland Hunt. And one got on one side of me, the other got on the other side of me, and they began to pray. So
mhm,
then it became the Catherine Davis comedy show. Okay, thank you. I kept trying to get up to leave, and they kept pushing me back down, and I kept trying to get up. But finally, they got a release from God that I was going to be okay.
mhm,
And so they put a book in my hand and said, read this and go do something about it. The name of the book was Grand Illusions, The Legacy of Planned Parenthood. And
mm,
it was after reading that book that I realized all that time I'd had a bullseye on my back. I was being targeted by the largest abortion provider in the nation because they felt like Black women shouldn't have children. It was a racial impetus
mhm,
to abortion, and that set me
mm,
on the pro-life path because I love being
mhm.
Black.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to be in any other ethnicity than the one God placed me in. And
Mhm,
I think we are very vibrant, um, contrary to the stereotypes. We are geniuses. If you go back and look historically, there were a whole bunch of Ben Carsons who
mhm,
pioneered new medicine, right? There were a whole bunch of men and women like the women in Hidden Figures who
mhm.
were exceptionally smart. They called them human computers, right? There, that is our legacy. We have testimony after testimony in our community of the genius in our community that has made America the great nation that she is, and yet, we don't talk about that part of
Right.
being Black in America, but
Mhm.
we talk about the victimization. So I'm no victim, but
Right.
I want the targeting to stop. We have to call a hard stop to abortion and the targeting that Planned Parenthood has done and is doing because we are very close to no longer being a represented ethnicity in America.
That is a great point. And I knew there was an emotional connection there because it is the driving force. And that story, your testimony shows that God can call you into this, particularly because of what you've gone through. You know, in Psalms, David said, my affliction was good for me. And
Yes.
I'm understanding that more and more as I get older, that God
Yes.
allows you to go through things for a purpose. So let's talk about the historical reference. Can you share with us, from your perspective, when you hear the word Margaret Sanger, what comes to mind?
Well, I tend to dispel the notion that Margaret was pro abortion. You
Mm,
said another name earlier,
uh-huh.
and that was Alan Guttmacher.
Mhm.
Did you know that Guttmacher actually ran Planned Parenthood for over 12 years? And
Interesting.
it was under his leadership
Mhm.
that we got abortion on demand.
Mm,
So I have uh, a divided, if you will,
yeah.
reaction to hearing Margaret's name. Now, granted, she
Mhm.
was the founder of the Negro Project.
Yeah.
She launched the project to target Black women and their children, to actually get men of God to
Mm,
teach and preach birth control and sterilization. That was her thing from
mm,
the pulpit. So there were people like Elaine Riddick who grew up in North Carolina, excuse me, and they involuntarily sterilized her after she had been raped and impregnated. When she delivered her son at the age of 14, they sterilized her. She had no idea that she had been sterilized until she got married and was trying to have children and couldn't. That's when she found out that they had involuntarily sterilized her through the North Carolina Eugenics Board.
Now,
Well,
this
there were,
for Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger, correct? Or
this
is this
is
all
Planned
around the same
Parenthood
time?
and Margaret Sanger.
Okay.
They were on the eugenics boards. They helped get them formed. There were 34 of them around the country, in 34 of our states, and they would just take you and sterilize you if they considered you feeble-minded, which was the language that Margaret Sanger used. Okay, so fast forward to the 1940s. Alan Guttmacher was interning at Johns Hopkins University. And in the 40s, America was still segregated. He went on the Black ward and saw all these vibrant, beautiful babies being born. And his wife says, he said, we got to do something about that, right?
Mm,
And he was the vice president of the American Eugenics Society. So he became a eugenicist, and then he implemented these eugenics principles that were the same principles of the eugenics board, on which Margaret Sanger heavily promoted them and helped organize them around the country. Guttmacher is the one who single-handedly um, changed the definition of a woman's health
mm,
to include her psychological health. There's actually a video from the old Department of Health and Human Services.
mm,
Health Education and Welfare is what it was called back then. And you see Guttmacher talking about abortion being a vibrant idea to make women happy. Had nothing to do with a medical need, had nothing to do with anything that we typically would associate abortion with, other than he wanted women to be happy. Now, what we didn't know was that was the tool that was going to be used to control the populations we don't want too many of, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said in 2009. So it was Guttmacher.
wow.
He he took over Planned Parenthood.
Mm.
He got the director of the Planned Parenthood in Connecticut, which is where I'm originally from, Connecticut.
Me too.
Are you where?
New Haven. I was
I'm from
born in New Haven.
Stanford. I was born in Stanford. I didn't know that.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. My mom's from Norwalk. My dad's from New Haven. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, he got Estelle Griswold. There's a case called Griswold v. Connecticut.
Mm,
That was the very first case that eliminated what was known as the Comstock laws. It came out of the Planned Parenthood in New Haven, Connecticut. She got her medical director to give married women birth control because the Comstock laws forbade contraception, forbade a doctor to distribute contraception to a woman. That was the first time we ever heard of a woman having a right to privacy in her womb. And they specifically said married women have a right to privacy, that they found somewhere in the Constitution, that to this day, if you go read the Constitution, you're not going to see that. But that was the ground that they used to strike down the part of the Comstock law that forbade contraception for married women. And then 7 years later, there was a second case, Eisenstadt v. Baird, that struck it down for single women. And then the very next year, we got Roe v. Wade. That was all under Alan Guttmacher. And Henry Kissinger literally titled Guttmacher the population suppression expert in our nation. He was considered an expert at telling nations how to control the populations. Again, that Ruth Bader Ginsburg said we don't want too many of. So he was the force behind abortion, because by the time abortion was approved, Margaret Sanger was dead and had been dead for like 12 years, right?
Right.
So it was Guttmacher, but most people think of him as the statistician who keeps the records, but he actually was the force behind legalized abortion in America.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. So, wow, I'm blown away. I'm blown away because my mind always goes to Margaret Sanger. And I know that
Yes.
that's it's an argument where there are some overlaps. There's some, some areas where there are some indications that she had some involvement. But to your point, being able to kind of nail her down as she's the one, that was always a challenge. So this kind of put a bow on that
Yeah.
historical reference.
Yeah.
Now,
And we should think about her because of the Negro Project,
right. Let's
where
talk
she,
about that. What is that?
in 1939, she and a man named Dr. C.J. Gamble were corresponding to one another about how they were going to get birth control into the culture. And she wrote a letter to him explaining that we needed to get the minister who could straighten it out if it ever occurred to any of our more rebellious members, meaning the Black people. um, the minister would be the man that could straighten it out if it ever occurred to us that they wanted to exterminate us. So she actually did begin this project of paying ministers, giving them money, um, to promote birth control, and sterilization was the methodology back then. And so they literally went throughout the South, North Carolina, Georgia, excuse me, etc., encouraging pastors. And they're very proud, if you go to their website, to talk about Adam Clayton Powell, Martin Luther King. They gave him the first Maggie Award. Um, but again, that was pre Roe v. Wade. That was before abortion. And then they started expanding it to include uh, other influencers besides just ministers. They started funding candidates for the various federal and state offices. So, like, we have a senator here today who says he's a pro-choice pastor. Well, he got was a recipient of Planned Parenthood's largesse. They contributed to his campaign. We have representatives in the State House who also contributed to go above and beyond for Planned Parenthood's agenda. One of those State House representatives is named Darshan Kendricks. And she offered a testicular Bill of Rights. Can you believe this?
Oh my God.
She put forth a piece of legislation. Now, it didn't pass, but she put forth this piece of legislation to require uh, men to get permission to use Viagra. um, and to get permission to to not use a condom. In fact, if you didn't use a condom, then you could be incarcerated. I
Oh, that's
mean, this bill,
big.
but that's the kind of thing Planned Parenthood wanted because they want to control the Black birth rate, and they are succeeding.
You know, that's interesting. The senator that you were speaking of, I'm pretty sure it's with Senator Raphael Warnock
Yeah.
here in Georgia.
Yes.
And we're absolutely, and I'm glad that we are open to calling people out, because you cannot continue to push bad agenda and gatekeep our community and then think that we're not going to call you out. That's why they can't
Right.
stand Black conservatives.
Right. Right. And
Um,
the thing is, that's oxymoronic,
right.
because the very first command the Lord gave us was to be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. Now, where he gets his uh, belief that it's okay for women to terminate their pregnancies, as they call it, I don't know. But from a biblical worldview, he should be promoting
Yeah,
life. The first inalienable right that we have is the right to life.
absolutely.
And somehow we have legislatively allowed that inalienable right to be trampled on. So it is time for us to say no more,
Mhm.
and let's affirm the Declaration of Independence that
Right.
we do have an inalienable right to life. And then let us employ the 14th Amendment of the Constitution and provide those children in the womb with equal protection and due process.
Absolutely. Man, I wish I could repeat that verbatim when I talk to people. That's that's exactly what we need to do. I mean, that's the best
Yes.
explanation. Let's talk about the Black church.
Okay.
Because when you went into basically employing, because you're paying your these Black ministers to go in and educate Black women on what they should be doing, it's almost the exact opposite of what they say. They say that men shouldn't be telling women what to do with their body, but you employ these pastors. And I look at pastors like Jamal Bryant, that's running around advocating for women to abort their children while he has his own stuff that he's got going on. And it's frustrating. So where do you stand on some of our civil rights leaders and our Black ministers that have perpetuated this narrative?
You know, it's a sad day in America that we have so many men who are willing to compromise the word of God.
Mm,
There is no explanation for why a Jamal Bryant or William Murphy,
mm,
Raphael Warnock, these guys who will stand in the pulpit
yeah,
and teach and preach something that is antichrist.
right.
It is absolutely against the word of God.
Hmm.
Now, there are pastors who are stepping up and saying, yeah, no, that, you're going against the word, and they're pushing back against it. But those pastors get suppressed.
Yeah.
And it's the folks that are continuing this agenda to control the Black birth rate that get the loudest reception. So again, there's no cavalry coming. We have to say no.
Hmm.
We have to stand up and say, okay, enough, and get our daughters to understand the value of that life in their womb. And that's where the Black church comes in.
Hmm.
Begin to educate again
Right.
about the sanctity of life, about how valuable it is. You know, it used to be a curse not to have children.
Hmm.
You know,
You're
it
right.
used to
You're
be
right.
if you were a barren woman, oh
Hmm.
my goodness, that was the last thing you wanted to be. We wanted to make little mini me's,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And now they flipped the script to it's almost a curse to have children. Well, we have to swing that pendulum back.
Hmm.
And the Black church is the vehicle that can do that. if we would simply come together and get louder than the Jamal Bryants and
Yeah.
louder than the William Murphys and Raphael Warnocks and these pastors who have sold their souls, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now, we also have to face the reality that many of these pastors have availed themselves of the abortionist services, so they don't feel like they can say no,
Mm,
because one of their side pieces may come up and shame them, right? But we
right.
have to stop it, and the church is and has been one of the most influential uh vehicles in the Black community. We
Yeah.
have to restore that influence.
Hmm.
And then we have to go beyond the church,
Yeah.
because so many are compromising the gospel. So we have to go into other venues like our barbershops and hairdressers
Mm.
and get them talking, because that's the second most influential sphere in the Black community.
Hmm.
You go get your hair done, you're gonna be in there a good 2-3 hours,
Right.
if not more. So
Hmm.
it's
They have the
have
best
them
discussion.
begin talking about. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because from a societal perspective, they're trying to shift the discussion to say that, it's a bad thing to give birth. But from a woman perspective, an emotional perspective, having me personally, I've talked about my challenges with fertility. It's a emotional thing, that feeling that comes when you're unable to conceive. It is a real emotional feeling, and you almost have to, I know I had to go on a journey with the Lord to detach myself from this notion of not being woman enough. And so
Mm,
but the fact that I felt that means that this is something that is innate. It's a desire that was put inside of you from God, and to act
amen.
as if you're not supposed to have that desire is antichrist.
That's correct. That's correct. And we have flipped the script, so to
Yep.
speak. And we don't talk about the
Mhm.
health issues that women are facing today because of their abortion decision.
Mhm.
Now, you mentioned you had struggles with your fertility.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say to you what God told Sarah, I'm gonna come back at the time of life. And you gonna have a baby. And she laughed, right? Because she
Right.
was like,
Oh,
what, 90 years old?
right.
So we can keep hope alive, right?
Right.
But when women go in these abortion chambers,
Yeah.
many are coming out infertile,
Yes.
because abortion is the only surgical procedure that's done blindly,
Mhm.
meaning that they're not using the ultrasound to guide them to take that child out of its mother's womb. They're just going in there and rooting around.
Yeah.
And so they are perforating women's wombs. They are pulling out their bowels. They are just damaging the scar tissue
Yeah.
that forms as a result of them rooting around someplace that God never intended
Right.
man's hands to go, right?
Right.
So now we have a huge premature birth issue
Hmm.
in the Black community, because our women's wombs have been so weakened, they can't hold their child for 9 months. And so they're
The
being born.
increase in
Mhm.
miscarriages, that
Yeah.
explains a lot, right? The increase in miscarriages.
Yes.
I believe some of these, the Plan B pill, I believe that some of these medical procedures, as far as birth controls, putting things up and like, inside of you, all types of birth controls. I connect that to why I'm in my situation. I'm trying to figure it out, but we were, as young women, particularly my generation, I'll be 40 this year, there was such a huge push to get on birth control. I'm glad my mom didn't do it while I was young, but I did in college. And they came out with all kinds of stuff, right? You had the ring, you had the IUDs, you had the pills, you had the shots. And I do believe that that affected fertility, because I'm seeing more and more women my age that are struggling with conceiving. And it almost feels like the mission never stopped.
But listen, when you took that birth control, it changed your natural bodily flow.
Yeah.
It shut down your reproductive system. It shut
Mhm.
it down.
Mhm.
So when you stop taking birth control,
Mhm.
it takes time for your body to come back into God's ordained
Right.
structure, right? And for many women, it never happens
Yeah.
because the chemicals that they were taking has so impacted their bodies,
Mhm.
it can't adjust. It's created a whole nother dynamic, if you will, on the inside.
Right.
Um,
Mm.
so the birth control is an issue. The abortion pill is an issue. You know, there's been all this hoopla about Amber Thurman and Candy Miller. They
Mhm.
were the two women. Now they died 2 years ago. We just
Oh,
now hear. Yes, they died in 2022.
interesting.
But we're just now hearing about it as poster children for removing Georgia's abortion, so-called abortion ban, would had absolutely nothing to do with those women's deaths.
Right.
Those women took the abortion pill. Now, I don't know where Amber went in North Carolina, but she was actually going for a surgical abortion. But because of the traffic, she couldn't get there on at the scheduled time, so she missed, excuse me, her scheduled appointment,
Mhm.
and they gave her the pill
Mm.
to take. So she took the pill there. She came home, and the first pill is the pill that took the life of her twins. She
Oh,
was having twins.
yeah. Ugh.
Then she came home, she took the second pill, which would put her in labor to deliver those children who are now deceased.
Mm.
Well, the second pill didn't work right.
Mm.
And so it didn't fully deliver her twins. So she goes to the emergency room where they hold her for 20 hours.
Wow.
20 hours.
Oh.
Only God and the angels know why.
Ugh.
Amber should still be with us.
Yeah.
But because of what I consider a clear case of medical malpractice, now I'm not a doctor. I
Mhm.
don't know what they
Yeah.
were, you know,
Mhm.
looking
Mhm.
at, but based on the report that ProPublica, who published this information, gave, they could smell the infection in Amber.
Mm.
So they knew that she had sepsis because they could smell it. Why would you wait 20 hours?
Wow.
And she couldn't survive that. That
Mhm.
was medical malpractice. That had nothing to do with Georgia's abortion ban.
Yeah.
Now, with Candy, the abortion industry, after the heartbeat bill went into effect, the abortion industry began to tell this story that, oh, if you miscarry, they're not going to be able to treat you and they're going to put you in jail. If you get an abortion, you're going to go to jail.
Mhm.
When the heartbeat law very clearly says if there's a medical emergency, this law doesn't apply, right?
Mhm.
But Candy is so petrified
Right.
because she ordered her pills from India
Mhm.
and took them, and now it didn't work, and she's hemorrhaging and getting sepsis, and she was too afraid to go to the emergency room because she thought they were going to put her in jail. What
Right.
a disservice the abortion industry has done,
Yeah.
and yet they wanted to try out Georgia's abortion law 2 months before we go to vote
Right.
to
Right.
influence that vote to say it was because of Georgia's heartbeat bill, which had absolutely nothing to do with those women's deaths. They waited until the statute of limitations was up on Amber before they published her death. Now, how many more have there been? We
Right.
don't know.
Right, right.
We
No,
don't know.
great point. I also saw something that showed that the pills that she got from overseas also had a trace of fentanyl in it. Because when you start ordering international, now you have no clue what's really being put into your pills. They're not subject to the FDA or the USDA. So that's always a problem. But not only that, but the fact that we're not talking about the abortion pill and being able, like, the first woman, I think it was the Candy that went to North Carolina, or was it
Amber.
Amber?
Amber went to North
Now,
Carolina.
if had they done a ultrasound and saw that she was carrying twins, they probably wouldn't have given her those abortion pills
Not true.
because it doesn't
Mm-mm,
necessarily work.
mm-mm,
Or do
mm-mm,
you know, really? They would have
mm-mm.
given it to her still?
Yeah.
So if
Yes.
you're carrying twins, they'll
Yes.
send you home
Yes.
to
To
abort
deliver
2
your
babies.
deceased children, and if you
Wow.
have them when you're on the toilet, they tell you just flush, don't look,
Oh,
because they don't want you to see the humanity of your child. You are going to see your
wow.
babies. And that's one of the things that they don't talk about, the psychological impact to our women today
Yeah.
who now have seen that their child,
Mhm,
and then they have to dispose of their child.
mm,
So how is our water supply? You're putting human flesh
mm.
in our water supply when you're telling them to flush those children. Don't look, just flush, right?
Wow.
We don't know. What if one of them had an ectopic pregnancy?
Right.
Because there's no examination, because you can get these pills telemed.
Mhm,
How, we don't even know how far along there. You're not supposed to take them once you're beyond. It used to be 10 weeks. Uh, No, it used to be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then they moved it to 10 or something.
mhm,
But how does the doctor know how far along you are? So I have a friend who had a micro preemie baby because she had all the risk factors, heart disease,
mm,
diabetes, etc. And her age
mm.
didn't help the
Yeah.
situation. And so she was considered a high risk pregnancy.
Mhm,
Well, the first thing that was off putting was from day one, they were encouraging her to abort her child. She kept telling them, I want this child. I want to hold on to this child as long as I can. But
mhm,
she became preeclamptic.
mm.
And so she had the answer to preeclampsia is to deliver the baby.
Yeah.
It is never abortion.
Right.
It's to deliver the baby. And then if the baby lives, the baby lives. If it doesn't, that's in the hands of God, right?
Right. But you're giving
So
it a chance to live.
you're giving it a chance to live. So she's in the NICU with her micropreemie, who survived, by the way,
Oh, praise God.
and is thriving right now.
Oh,
And there's another baby in there from a mother who was way far along. You're not supposed to take those pills
mhm,
when you are 19, 20 weeks, right?
right.
But she did. She got a friend to get the pills, and the friend gave her the pills. And so her baby was born prematurely,
Mm,
and it was surviving
mm,
in the NICU. But these are the things that we are facing from
mhm,
these abortion pills that are extremely
mhm.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, and a friend of mine who's a physician, the way he puts it is 50% of the time a person is going to die. And someone challenged him, was like, the FDA would never approve that. Well, they did,
Mm,
because if that pill works, or when that pill works, almost 100% of the time, that baby's going to die. And now, as we see with Candy and Amber,
mhm.
mom may die too.
Yeah.
So these pills are dangerous. They are not safe.
Mhm,
And women should be warned. I don't know if they give the woman the black box warning that comes with those pills that say you
Mhm.
could hemorrhage or get sepsis or
Mhm.
whatever. But we need to be screaming to
Yeah.
women, these pills are not safe, they're dangerous.
At the time of this taping, we have a election that is underway. We have two candidates that are, battling it out, close, very close. But it's important to note that a major topic is abortion, that you have candidates running on abortion. What are your thoughts as it relates to the current climate and the discussion that's happening as it relates to this election?
It is disheartening because one of the two candidates,
Mhm.
uh, the her only issue, as far as I can see, that
Mhm.
she has been consistent on from the beginning is abortion.
Yeah.
Every other issue that impacts our lives, she's been going back and forth. But the steadiness that she's shown is abortion, abortion, abortion.
Mhm.
Um, and the problem with that is the other candidate, bless his heart,
Mhm.
hasn't taken a strong stand on life
Yep.
like he had in the past.
Mhm.
But I feel like I could maybe persuade him to take a stronger stance on life, but I feel like I have no chance of saving our babies with her.
Yeah.
She when she was the DA in California,
Mhm.
um, no, not DA, Attorney General.
Mhm.
There was a young man in California named David Daleiden. David went underground. He was a journalist. He went underground, so to speak, for 3 years, assumed a different persona so that he could document that Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers were selling the body parts of the children that they aborted. And he documented it. I mean, he has one of Planned Parenthood's doctors on tape saying she wants a Lamborghini
Mm.
from aborting children.
Mm.
And um, he had his house raided. He
Mm.
had all of the tapes confiscated from him. The laws in California about undercover journalists was changed. It's the only place in America where undercover journalists is no longer protected,
Oh, wow.
all because of the
Mm.
attorney general at that time, who has received, at that time, she had received more than 81,000 of Planned Parenthood's dollars. And
Mm.
who knows what the
Mhm.
amount is that she has received today. There is something terribly broken and terribly wrong when the only policy that you're clear on is
Yep.
that you want to take the lives of children in the womb.
Yes, absolutely. Particularly when she hasn't given birth herself as a woman.
Correct.
And so that would lead me to believe that there could be fertility challenges there. And you would think that she would have her, own. Now, because I don't know, she hasn't spoken about it. At least I haven't seen it. But I don't know why, but I do know that she, as a woman, it really is it's just really sad to see that you would advocate for something like this, particularly when you are supposed to be all for women's health, particularly when they
Right.
talk about maternal mortality every day, as if that is something that I don't know. Let me ask you your thoughts. What are your thoughts on maternal mortality in this conversation? Because they love to talk about this as a reason to support abortion, and I don't understand the connection.
You know,
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs318@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion.
I did a conference here in Georgia back in July, and I had a panel of doctors to talk to us about, is abortion health care? And one of those doctors addressed the maternal mortality issue. And he said, okay, first of all, none of the numbers that you're seeing are true. He's like, we don't have a correct accounting on what maternal mortality is. And so his thing was, we really don't have this huge issue with maternal mortality in America the way they're making it seem. So, and I would encourage people to go to my website, therestorationproject.life. That video is up there so you can hear the doctor for yourself. But how much of the maternal mortality that we see, how much of that is due to a botched abortion? You know, abortion, we don't talk about this the right way, but I do what I call the roll call of the women that have died as a result of their abortion decision. Candy and Amber are the most recent examples, but I can give you a list like Cree Irwin, who died in her mother's bed on the 4th of July from a botched abortion at a Planned Parenthood. Tanya Reeves, who they botched the abortion, but rather than take her the mile or two down the street to the emergency facility, they continued to try to do the abortion. She literally hemorrhaged to death. Lakeisha Wilson, they brought that sister out of the abortion center naked from the waist up. And the abortionist is running behind the EMTs and saying, she's an organ donor, she's an organ donor. And they literally hooked Lakeisha up to life support for an additional 7 days so they could harvest her body parts. So how much of that, and these are only the ones that we knew because sidewalk counselors were out there and saw the ambulances, right? How many more were there that we didn't see? How many were like Cree Irwin, who went home and then died? She didn't die, get taken directly to the hospital from the abortion clinic. She went home. So how much of that so-called maternal mortality is because these abortionists are
Mm.
butchers.
Yeah.
I mean, just the other day, the candidate had a rally and she had all these abortion doctors that were there that were scheduled to speak. It was like 10 of them or something, and they were going to be championing abortion. And there were people in the crowd who suffered a medical emergency, and not one of those abortion doctors rendered assistance to the people who were experiencing a medical emergency. Why?
Right.
Because many of those doctors are substandard doctors. They couldn't make it
Mm.
in whatever their field was. Most of them are not OBGYNs.
Mm.
They're something else. And the ones that were OBGYNs have a record of injuring women, and
Mm.
which is, excuse me, why they can't do a regular practice. So the health crisis that we are experiencing physically and psychologically, the infertility, the maternal mortality. I believe a lot of the numbers are directly due to
Yeah.
a botched abortion experience somewhere in the country. In this, excuse me, a group called Operation Rescue.
Mhm.
And when they find out about these medical emergencies, they will post them. And you go to their website, and the Planned Parenthoods and other abortionists say, tell the ambulances to come with no lights, no sirens,
Mm.
right? So, because they don't want people to know
Mm.
how frequently their patients are being taken for emergency care. We have a crisis. And here in Georgia, did you know Georgia is deemed a maternal desert for Black women in this state?
Really? What does that
Yeah.
mean? Wait, like we're
We're
not.
not getting the medical care that we need, solid maternal care to help us have our children
Oh.
the way we should, just like Amber.
Mm.
Why would they wait 20 hours before rendering her assistance?
Right.
What is it about Black women in Georgia that we can't get quality medical care?
Mm.
And there are articles written about Georgia being a maternal desert for Black women.
So
And
how do we get our elected officials to how do we hold them accountable to fixing this? What are some ways that you feel all of us can advocate to fix this, particularly as a Black woman? I mean,
you gonna get me in
you know,
trouble.
look, I'm gonna get myself in trouble with you
Oh
then, because
Lord.
we're all about
Lord.
telling the truth around here. And
Well, let's tell the truth and shame the devil.
let's do it.
We have no enforcement of any of the laws in our state dealing with life. There's no one in our state that can tell you what the inside of one of the 14, well, now it's 13 abortion clinics that we have in our state.
Mm.
Only 4 of the clinics were licensed to do abortions. Now it's 3 because Atlanta Medical Center closed. So we only have 3 licensed. So the other 10 are considered doctor's offices. The only time you can get someone to look at them is if you have a complaint specifically against the doctor, if you even know who that doctor was.
Wow.
Because when you go into, according to patient information, they say
Mhm.
you walk in, they give you your pills if it's a surgical abortion, and you're high,
Mhm.
and then they start giving you the informed consent forms to sign. So you don't even know what you're signing, but no one is inspecting them.
Mm.
There's one in Columbus, literally the roof, because the air conditioning heating system was on the roof
Mhm.
and it malfunctioned and it fell through. They did not close one day
Wow.
and continued aborting children, but they were considered a doctor's office. not a clinic. But the only thing they do is abortions.
Hmm.
Um, so we don't have enforcement. Even today, um, um, we don't know how many abortions are done beyond the 6 weeks.
Mm. And this
You
is
know,
in Georgia. There's
Georgia.
no like, so we're not even measuring or keeping track of what's happening while we're fighting this. Do you think this is because talking about abortion is not a good for your campaign?
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
And I think many people are happy with the results. You know, in Georgia, 66% of the abortions are on Black women.
66%?
66% of the abortions in our state, and that has been the case for the last several years,
Wow.
are on Black women alone. Now, people will challenge me and say, well, that's because white women go to their doctors and whatever. And I'm like, are you okay
Right.
that 66% of the reported abortions, even if the Caucasian women are going someplace else to get theirs, are
Mhm.
you okay that 66% of the abortions are on women that look like me and you? I'm
Right.
not okay with that.
Right. That's
And
something
the
you
question
would
is
advocate
why?
against. Right.
Because Planned Parenthood has put a target on our back. We are targeted, and they tell us to our face. In
Mhm.
2017, Creative Loafing did an article asking Planned Parenthood how they chose the facility they had just opened in the East Atlanta Village area, right? And
Mhm.
they told them we went to the Rawlings School of Public Health and we gave them this criteria on where we were most needed. Do you know where they put that facility? On Moreland Avenue,
Wow.
right by 20.
Yep. Yep.
Now,
In the
what
heart of the Black community.
criteria did you give them? It's targeting Black women and their children.
Yeah.
And as I said at the top of the hour, we are now approaching irreversibility. If you go on my website again, the restorationproject.life,
Yes.
there's another video up there
Mhm.
titled Irreversibility that explains we're not having children.
Yeah. And you know, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can go into the description box and click the link to go straight to Catherine's website. I'm gonna make sure that's linked in there. Now this is I want to talk about two things really quickly, and I'm gonna let
Okay.
you go because I can talk to you for hours about this. And I am just so intrigued. I've learned so much, and I hope everyone watching has also learned so much. Let's talk about the systemic issues around the Black community, because that's something that always comes up around, you know, the reason why we have a high rate of abortion in our community is because of us not having opportunities or access to funding and access to jobs and all these systemic issues that drive us to feel like we can't take care of our kids. What are your thoughts? What do you say when it comes to that argument?
I say that's a lie straight from the pit.
Mm.
You know, this notion that most Black women are poor, beat down women is not true.
Mm.
We are not in poverty, at poverty, or near poverty, the lion's share of us. 78% of us are not poor. So
Mm.
we can take care of our children. But let me just say this, if you don't want children, you never have to get pregnant
Right.
because God is a very wise and smart God, you
Mhm.
know? So he said, and he told us in the book of Genesis, there's a very narrow amount of time that a woman could even get pregnant. The
Mhm.
Bible calls it the time of life.
Yeah.
The angel came to Sarah and said, I'm going to come back at the time of life. Well, what time of life is that? It's like 6 or 7 days out of the month.
Mhm.
And you can now download an app on your phone that will tell you exactly when you're fertile. If you don't want children, then just don't have sex when you're fertile.
Right.
And then you don't have to worry about
Mhm.
getting pregnant. But these excuses for taking the life of your child. It's nothing more than a smokescreen and a sham for population control.
Yeah.
And they are population controlling us out of existence, but they sold it to us like it's a civil right.
Mm.
Like, this is a right you have, your body, your choice. You can't tell women what to do with their bodies, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stop that.
Yeah.
And decide, clearly, if you don't want children, just know your body.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is the Restoration Project? I want to close on that. And then lastly, I would love for you to give a message to women who have experienced abortion, who have made those decisions, who was just like you around the age where it first started and you were being targeted. I would love for you to tell us about Restoration Project and then close on your message as a believer to women who are carrying the weight of abortion, but have chosen to do something different.
Well, the Restoration Project is a pro-life, pro-family, pro-education organization that is focusing today on restoration of the family. We have to bring our men back into the families. We have to give them a say-so. In the book of Malachi, the Bible said God said that he was going to turn the hearts of the fathers towards their children. Satan's response to that was to turn the heart of the mother against her child and make that child seem like it's a parasite or something to be gotten rid of. We have to close that chasm that has been created by the abortion industry to make us think our children don't have value. I would say to every woman. In fact, I was in Richmond earlier this week, and a lady came up to me at the end of the luncheon that I did and whispered in my ear, "Thank you for freeing me," because she was one of the ones who had aborted her child at a younger age, and she had been carrying the weight of it. There is an answer. And there is healing. God forgives all of us if we simply ask.
Yeah.
But also, the Restoration Project is promoting what I call restitution now. Because Planned Parenthood has specifically targeted the Negro population, we are making a demand. We, the Restoration Project and the National Black Prolife Coalition, are making a demand for restitution for the harm they have said they caused Black women. If you go back to 2020, Planned Parenthood admitted that they are a systemically racist, white supremacist organization who has caused reproductive harm to women of color. Well, then you need to give Black women restitution. You and all of the companies that have funded you to target those Black women, we're asking for restitution now in the amount of $300,000 for every Black woman of childbearing age and above. So my heart is to get healing to our women. I want to encourage them to go to supportafterabortion.com, where they can get free confidential counseling to help start that healing process. And then I want to invite them to join me in pushing back against this targeting. And again, if you go to my website, there is a link up there to sign the Restitution Now letter, and also a letter that we sent to the Congress asking them to investigate Planned Parenthood for violating the civil rights laws of our nation by targeting Black women and their children.
Wow. I am blown
We
away.
gotta pick a fight, right? We gotta pick a fight. So
we do.
yes.
No,
And
that
we
is
can't
awesome.
be passive about it. We have to, one, call a hard stop to taking the lives of our children.
Yes.
But two, let's demand accountability from the one who has been targeting us
Mhm.
since they opened that first abortion clinic in upstate New York in 1970. And that is Planned Parenthood. It's time to stop.
You know what? It's funny. I know but you always introduce yourself to me as Catherine, but you are Miss Davis to me. You are because I,
I'm
um,
old, I know.
Madam Davis. I mean, I am just so blown away. I love having conversations with people who understand the history, the statistics, the story, the narrative, the why. And that's what you
Amen.
were able to provide for us. And I'm so excited. I cannot wait to hear more from you. I'm going to continue to push this, and I'm going to make sure I send this interview out to as many people as possible, because
Thank you.
particularly our women, because we are being
Yes.
deceived. And the scripture that talks about silly women. And I look
Yes.
at that and I'm like, it doesn't mean that, I know my opinion, my interpretation is that it's not saying that women in general are silly. It just means that when you are always getting all this information, but never coming into truth, just
Yes.
obtaining
Yes.
knowledge, but never
Yes.
getting into the point of truth, that's a
Yes.
dangerous place to be in.
Amen. Amen.
So thank you so much. Thank you all
Thank
for
you for
listening.
having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm hoping to have you back so we can do a part 2, because I want to go into the civil rights movement and what took place around that. So I think we need to have a part 2, if that's okay.
Amen. Amen. That's fine. I would love to. All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
and I'll be in touch for sure.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs318@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.